Did you know that the most feared boxer in history found his greatest strength not in his devastating punches, but on his knees in prayer? You'll never believe the shocking truth about Mike Tyson's spiritual transformation that the media got completely wrong for decades. This isn't just about a convicted felon finding God. This is about how the baddest man on the planet discovered Islam before he ever set foot in prison, and how that discovery saved his soul when the world turned against him. But what really happened behind the scenes will change everything you thought you knew about Iron Mike. Asterisk, for over 30 years, the world believed a lie. Every sports journalist, every biography, every documentary claimed the same story. Mike Tyson converted to Islam while serving time in prison for rape. The narrative was simple, convenient, and completely false. The media painted a picture of a broken man finding religion behind bars, desperately seeking redemption. But here's the shocking truth that Tyson himself revealed. He had already embraced Islam before his imprisonment in 1992. The most feared fighter in boxing history had been quietly studying Islamic teachings while still terrorizing opponents in the ring. Yet Tyson made a deliberate choice to let the world believe the lie. But why would he allow such a massive misconception to persist? Asterisk, long before his world came crashing down, young Mike Tyson was already being exposed to Islamic teachings through an unexpected source. His chauffeur, a devout Muslim, began introducing the volatile champion to the principles of Islam. This wasn't a dramatic conversion moment, it was a gradual awakening that began while Tyson was still at the height of his destructive power. The chauffeur saw something in Tyson that the rest of the world had missed, a lost soul crying out for guidance. Between rides to training sessions and championship fights, quiet conversations about faith, discipline, and spiritual peace began planting seeds in Tyson's troubled mind. The man who struck fear into heavyweight contenders was secretly learning to humble himself before Allah, but the world had no idea what was happening behind the limousine's tinted windows. Asterisk, picture this. The most violent man in boxing, fresh from destroying opponents in seconds, returning home to study Islamic texts. While the media focused on Tyson's wild parties, his explosive temper, and his controversial statements, he was quietly exploring a faith that preached peace, self-control, spiritual discipline. This wasn't the typical celebrity conversion story. Tyson wasn't seeking publicity or trying to rehabilitate his image. He was genuinely drawn to Islam's teachings about inner strength and spiritual warfare against one's own demons. The irony was staggering. The man the world saw as uncontrollable was learning about the ultimate form of self-control through Islamic submission to Allah, but his spiritual journey was about to face its ultimate test. March 26, 1991, Indianapolis. The night that changed everything. Mike Tyson's encounter with Desiree Washington led to rape charges that would shatter his career and send him to prison. Suddenly, the most powerful man in boxing found himself powerless, facing years behind bars and the complete destruction of his reputation. For most people, this would be rock bottom. But for Tyson, who had already begun his Islamic journey, it became something else entirely. A test of faith. The question wasn't whether he would find religion in prison. He had already found it. The question was whether his newfound faith would be strong enough to sustain him through the darkest period of his life. What happened next would prove the true power of Islamic faith. Asterisk, Indiana Youth Center wasn't just Mike Tyson's prison, it became his spiritual boot camp. While the world assumed he was discovering Islam for the first time, Tyson was actually deepening a faith he had already embraced. Enter Muhammad Siddiq, an Indianapolis public school teacher who volunteered as a Muslim chaplain at the prison. Siddiq became more than just a spiritual advisor. He became the mentor who helped Tyson transform his understanding of Islam from casual interest to life-changing devotion. Their sessions weren't about converting a desperate inmate. They were about educating a man who had chosen Islam but never fully understood its depth. 3 years of intensive Islamic study were about to produce a completely different Mike Tyson. Asterisk, inside his cell, Mike Tyson established a routine that would have shocked his critics. 5 times a day, the man once known for his unpredictability knelt facing Mecca in perfect submission to Allah. The fighter who had terrified opponents with his explosive rage was learning the Islamic principle of inner peace through prayer. Tyson read the Quran daily, studied Arabic, and participated in Islamic study groups with other Muslim inmates. He failed his high school equivalency exam, but he mastered complex theological concepts. He recited Maya Angelou's poetry when she visited, but more importantly, he recited verses from the Quran that spoke to his soul. Prison wasn't breaking Mike Tyson, it was rebuilding him as a Muslim man of faith. Asterisk, here's where Tyson's story differs dramatically from other celebrity Muslim converts. Muhammad Ali became Muhammad Ali and Cassius Clay disappeared forever. Mike Tyson made a conscious decision to keep his birth name. The media reported he had adopted the name Malik Abdul Aziz. But this was another misconception Tyson chose not to correct. Muhammad Siddiq confirmed that, unlike other Muslim converts, Tyson would keep his original name. This wasn't about rejecting his Islamic identity, it was about proving that Islam could transform the person without erasing the individual. Mike Tyson would remain Mike Tyson, but he would be a completely different version of that man. But his first test of that transformation was approaching fast. Asterisk, March 25, 1995. After serving 3 years of a 6-year sentence, Mike Tyson walked out of prison as a free man. But instead of heading straight home or to a press conference, his first stop sent shockwaves through the media. He went directly to a mosque. Wearing a white knit skullcap, Tyson knelt and prayed to Allah as his first act of freedom. The Islamic Society of North America Mosque was packed with Muslims who had come to welcome their brother home. In an incredible moment of symbolism, Muhammad Ali himself was there to greet Tyson and join in the prayers of thanksgiving. Two of boxing's greatest champions, united not by their shared profession, but by their shared faith in Islam. The prayers lasted 30 minutes, but the impact would last forever. Asterisk, the media didn't know how to handle this version of Mike Tyson. They had expected either a broken man seeking sympathy or an angry convict plotting revenge. Instead, they got a Muslim convert speaking about spiritual peace and divine guidance. Sports journalists struggled to reconcile the violent image they had created with the man discussing Islamic principles. Tyson's first interviews after prison were unlike anything anyone expected. He spoke about reading Islamic texts, about finding inner peace through prayer, and about wanting to be a better Muslim. The man who had once threatened to eat opponents' children was now quoting the Quran. America didn't know what to do with a spiritually transformed Mike Tyson, but his faith was about to face its biggest challenge yet. Asterisk, within months of his release, Mike Tyson was back in the boxing ring, generating massive paydays and global attention. But now he faced a unique challenge: how to maintain Islamic principles while participating in a sport built on violence and aggression. The answer lay in Tyson's understanding of jihad, not as holy war, but as the inner struggle against one's own negative impulses. For Tyson, every fight became a test of spiritual discipline. He approached boxing not as unleashing his demons, but as controlling them. His pre-fight prayers weren't about asking Allah for victory. They were about asking for strength to represent Islam with dignity. The results were immediate. Tyson regained the WBA and WBC heavyweight titles in 1996, but more importantly, he regained respect as a man of faith. Asterisk, what the public never understood was that Tyson's return to boxing dominance wasn't despite his Islamic faith, it was because of it. Islam taught him discipline, focus, and mental preparation that enhanced, rather than hindered, his fighting ability. His daily prayers provided emotional stability, his Quranic studies sharpened his mental clarity, and his submission to Allah gave him confidence beyond human understanding. Tyson's training camps now included Islamic prayer times and halal dietary requirements. His entourage included Muslim advisors alongside boxing trainers. He was proving that a devout Muslim could excel in professional sports while maintaining spiritual integrity. But the boxing world was about to witness something that would test the limits of that integration. June 28, 1997, Las Vegas, the infamous night when Mike Tyson bit Evander Holyfield's ear during their heavyweight title fight. In an instant of uncontrolled rage, Tyson seemed to abandon everything his Islamic faith had taught him about self-discipline and spiritual control. The Muslim who had spoken about inner peace was disqualified for one of the most shocking acts in sports history. The aftermath was devastating. Critics argued that Tyson's conversion was fake, that his Islamic faith was just a prison facade that crumbled under pressure. The boxing world questioned whether a man capable of such savagery could truly be a devoted Muslim. But what happened next revealed the true depth of Tyson's spiritual journey and his understanding of Islamic principles of repentance and redemption. Instead of abandoning his faith after the ear-biting incident, Mike Tyson turned deeper into Islamic teachings about forgiveness and redemption. Islam doesn't promise perfection. It promises the opportunity for continuous spiritual growth and divine mercy for those who sincerely repent. Tyson's response to his failure wasn't to give up on Islam, but to become a better Muslim. He increased his prayer frequency, sought guidance from Islamic scholars, and publicly acknowledged his mistakes, while asking for Allah's forgiveness. This wasn't the behavior of a fake convert. This was the authentic struggle of a Muslim man trying to live up to his faith's highest ideals. Tyson's honesty about his spiritual failures actually strengthened his credibility as a genuine believer. Seeking Allah's guidance? As Tyson aged, his Islamic faith became more central to his identity than his boxing legacy. He spoke openly about praying multiple times daily, about reading the Quran for guidance, about wanting to die as a Muslim in good standing with Allah. He admitted he wasn't a perfect Muslim. He acknowledged eating non-halal food and having tattoos forbidden in Islam. But he never stopped trying to improve his spiritual practice. This honesty about his imperfections actually made Tyson's faith more relatable and authentic. He wasn't claiming to be a perfect Muslim scholar. He was admitting to being a flawed human being, seeking Allah's guidance and mercy. His journey from the baddest man on the planet to a humble servant of Allah inspired countless Muslims who also struggled with living up to their faith's ideals. Today, Mike Tyson's conversion to Islam stands as one of the most misunderstood, but ultimately triumphant spiritual journeys in modern history. The world got the timeline wrong, but they couldn't deny the transformation. The man who had been boxing's most feared and troubled figure became one of its most honest and spiritually grounded personalities. Tyson's Islamic faith didn't make him perfect. It made him human. It didn't erase his past mistakes. It gave him the spiritual framework to learn from them and seek redemption. Most importantly, it didn't happen in a prison cell, as a desperate grab for salvation. It began as a genuine spiritual search that sustained him through his darkest hours and continues to guide him today. The real story of Mike Tyson's conversion to Islam isn't about finding God behind bars. It's about how a young man discovered Islamic teachings before his fall, how those teachings sustained him through imprisonment and disgrace, and how faith in Allah transformed the most feared fighter in boxing history into a humble Muslim seeking spiritual peace. Mike Tyson's journey from prison cell to prayer mat wasn't a desperate conversion. It was the continuation of a spiritual quest that began long before the world was watching, continues long after his last fight. His greatest victory wasn't won in any boxing ring. It was won in the quiet moments of prayer. When the baddest man on the planet learned to submit to Allah and discovered true strength through Islamic faith, sometimes the most powerful punch is the one you don't throw. And the greatest strength comes not from destroying your enemies, but from surrendering to Allah.